Hello YouTube. I have a tip about doing railing. And installing a railing, you have to look for a stud, of course, to mount the railing to with those brackets. And sometimes the studs aren't exactly where you need them to be to mount the railing. In this case, I had two studs in a good location there. You can see I have two brackets supporting this pretty long railing here. And it looks really nice and clean just having the two brackets on there. And it was just pretty solid with the two brackets in place, but not quite solid enough. I could feel a tiny bit of movement when I put a lot of weight on the railing with my hand. So I decided that I needed to reinforce the railing somehow, and I was debating about adding a third bracket, but the problem is that the third bracket would have ended up somewhere not in the center. The center would have been right there, would have been okay to have a bracket, but then the stud would have been kind of off-centered in a weird location, and it wouldn't have looked as clean or as good. So I really wanted this project to look nice, and so I spent a lot of time trying to make it look really good. And so one of the benefits of having um, a railing that you make that angles like this into the wall is then you can add a screw right here into the wood if you're lucky enough to have a stud in this location, or if you line it up in such a way that you have a stud in this location. So I look under here, you can barely see it, but I got a little screw with a tiny head. The small head screws. I found a stud. There's a stud right here, and I pre-drilled a hole in this angle, angling it toward where the stud is, and then drilled it in. You can't even see it, and it makes it way more secure. So having this bracket, into the stud is nice and secure, and it would have been secure enough. I didn't have to do that extra screw into the stud, but it was helpful. And on my other railing upstairs, I had to do it because I'll show you a different railing where I had to put this into a sheetrock with a sheetrock anchor, and that's not secure enough for sure for a railing. So this one is super secure because it's got two brackets into a stud, and then I've got a screw buried right here that goes into a stud, so it makes this extra secure and firm, so I can't even move it at all, putting even my whole weight on it. Same thing right here. So I've got a screw into a stud on the bracket, and then I've also got a screw, little star head screw that's buried into the wood that also goes into a stud here. So it looks nice and clean having only two brackets. I really like the clean look of just two brackets on there, because like I said, if I would have had to add a third bracket, there was not a stud right in the center that would have made it look decent. The bracket would have been off center somewhere, and it would have looked kind of funny. I guess I could have added two more brackets, and even those two brackets wouldn't have been in ideal locations. It just would have looked like overkill, and it would have not looked as nice. So I really like the clean look of two brackets, and I really like the idea of you can put a screw into the wood, into the stud, and make it strong and secure that way. So I really like the way this railing turned out. The whole overall project looks really good and turned out really nice. Spent a lot of time working on this, so I'm glad that we spent the time to make it look good. I'm really happy how things turned out. So like I said, the way things look matter. When you go to resell your house later, you want things to look as nice as possible. And of course, trends change. The styles of things change after how things look. But this is definitely an update from the early 1990s yellowish oak banister that we had before. Having this nice white railing and balusters is looking good. I think it's a nice improvement on the house overall. So coming up here, another tip I can give you is I used a little bit of just black silicone caulk right here. When you have dark wood railing, of course you don't want to use white caulk, and I didn't really want to use clear caulk either, so I got a little bit of black caulk to fill in just a tiny gaps right there to make it look nicer. Another tip I have is that I used black Sharpie marker, also to fill in areas where after nailing in things, I had to fill in areas after putting in nails, and the little white light spots where it got scratched or slightly damaged, you just take a black Sharpie and fill in some of those areas to hide any tiny blemishes in the dark railing. And same thing up here. You can use wood filler or a big wood oak plug, but I didn't like the oak plug that would have disrupted the nice oak pattern I have here. So I used a little bit of black Sharpie and put polyurethane over it. It looks like it's rubbed off a little bit. I need to put another coat of polyurethane, but I'm gonna take a black Sharpie and hide those areas, and then another coat of polyurethane to protect the black Sharpie and make it look nice that way. Another railing right here where we had to put screws because this wood has the angle. You can't really do this unless you have an angled wood. I made the railings. I had to do a cut right here and then join the railings together. So there's a nice angle that goes straight into the wall. But so we got a bracket here. But this one, unfortunately, is not into a stud. I'm pretty sure this is the one that is just kind of in the sheetrock, because there's a stud here. And I could have made my railing longer and I would have been able to put it in a stud, but unfortunately I measured a little short on this one and made my railing a little shorter than I should have made it. And because of that, it didn't allow me to put both of these brackets into a stud. I believe this one's in a stud, and I think this one is just in the sheetrock with a sheetrock anchor. In order to make it strong enough and very sturdy, I then put buried a screw here into this, along, I think it's a good 3-inch screw from the oak into the wall and the stud there. And then I've also got a screw, or a couple screws it looks like, that I buried right here. You can see the screw in that area there. And those go into the stud in the wall. And they're nice and hidden. You can't see them unless you're really looking for them if you duck down and look underneath. So that's another place where you can reinforce railing if for some reason the alignment doesn't work out, to use a stud on these brackets. And it's still very, very secure. It's really, really strong. I can put my whole weight on it, doesn't budge. And so, you definitely need to have railing into the studs.